Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. This week we look at the 9 most compelling could-have-beens. Why 9? Well, it's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings, Prime 9. The history of baseball is brimming with heroes, men who became stars and performed record-setting feats.
I'm the greatest of all time.
Some went on to lead their teams to World Series titles.
I don't believe what I just saw!
Others are enshrined forever in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. But what of those who seemed destined to achieve greatness, only to have it slip away? Their Major League Baseball legacy short-circuited by illness.
Just don't take it for granted, because you never know. Tomorrow's not promised to any of us.
An accident. An injury.
He goes curled into Ray Fosse.
Or a cruel twist of fate.
Stratton lost his leg in a hunting accident.
In this episode, we'll showcase 9 players who we think could have been great,
He got it! 16 strikeouts!
but who never fulfilled their promise.
And another wild one.
So here then are our top 9 could-have-been, starting with number 9 on Prime 9.
Swing and a miss, he got him!
Rick Ankiel has done it again.
When Rick Ankiel came back up from the minors in 2007, he impressed the Cardinals as a power-hitting outfielder with all the tools to become a star.
And the Cardinals come back and win the game.
Rick Ankiel is a tremendous athlete. The strength and power that he brings and bat speed is, it's remarkable.
But the first chapter of Rick's baseball life was no less remarkable.
I don't think we've ever seen the arc of a career quite like the one of Rick Ankiel.
See you later. Swing and a miss, struck him out.
You see, Ankiel began his major league career as a pitcher, one often likened to Sandy Koufax.
Another strikeout here tonight for Rick Ankiel. He is just mowing them down.
Got him on a high fastball.
He just had a presence about him that people were recognizing him as a top pitcher. He had electric stuff.
What a big curveball that was in a 1-2-3 first inning.
As a rookie in 2000, he won 11 games and had almost 200 strikeouts,
And he got it.
and helped lead the Cardinals to the division title.
Strikeout for Rick Ankiel.
Rick entered the playoffs living the dream of every young pitcher.
Got him.
But his fantasy quickly turned into a nightmare, one he simply could not shake.
When he got into the postseason with the Cardinals, something clicked there where he just totally lost confidence, lost the feel for being able to throw the ball over the plate. It became painful to watch him pitch.
Wow! Ankiel is holding on by a thread right now.
For reasons still unknown today, Rick just lost his grip.
We faced him in our game. The first batter was Timo Perez, and the first pitch was right at him, right at his head.
And another wild one.
You just know the kind of pain and can feel the kind of pain that he was going through. It's almost a helpless situation. It's almost like someone falls off the boat and can't swim.
35 pitches, tortured pitches in the inning.
His career as a pitcher was over, but Rick was determined to cultivate a new one. So he returned to the minor leagues, and over 3 years, he refined the skill he was always good at: hitting.
Ankiel down the right field line. Gone.
Rick has resurfaced as a strong position player, but as a pitcher, he will always wonder what could have been.
He makes a sensational catch.
He's doing fantastic as a position player, but if he would end up throwing strikes, he could have been one of the most dominant left-handed pitchers. You never know.
Ray Fosse was an up-and-coming young catcher in the American League, and gosh, he was really a good-looking young player.
Good enough to make his first All-Star team at the age of 23. One of the finest young catchers in all of baseball. His future was filled with promise.
He could hit, he could throw, called a great game. It was just unfortunate that
he lost out on a major portion of his career.
The winning run was heading home at that All-Star game when Ray's catching instincts kicked in.
Moses coming to the plate. He's in. It's all over. The National League wins.
I could hear that sound in the outfield. It was scary.
He throws barreled into Ray Fosse, who is slow in getting up.
All of a sudden I'm hit by this thundering whatever, and all of a sudden I'm on the ground, I'm rolling over, flipped over, and my left shoulder felt like it's on my right side. I mean, it hurt that much. It seems like every time I go out on the field to either break up a fight or get involved, I come out bleeding, hurt, or something, so I try to avoid it.
Although he would play 8 more years and win 2 championships with the Oakland A's, Fosse never did sustain his all-star form. Injuries would dog him throughout his career. But it was that 1970 collision that left folks wondering what could have been.
He was the exciting young catcher that had come onto the major league scene, and so you were excited. It's just disappointing when you see something like that happen to someone.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the 9 most compelling could-have-beens in the game. You've heard the stories behind 9 and 8. We now continue with number 7. In 1941, everyone's attention was commanded by Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak and Ted Williams' pursuit of a .400 batting average. But in Brooklyn, a promising 22-year-old rookie named Pete Reiser was tearing up the National League.
Pete was a great hitter. There's no question about that. He led the National League in hitting his first year in the major leagues.
His experience as a Brooklyn Dodger in the early 40s showed him that he could hit 20 homers, 20 triples, 40 doubles. He was going to be a perennial all-star. He was going to be a Hall of Famer.
Pete would lead Brooklyn to the World Series for the first time in 21 years and also led his league in hitting. The next year, Reiser was hitting over .380 and threatening to challenge Ted's mark of .406. But Pete knew only one way to play the game. And it cost him.
Reiser played each game, each inning, each fly ball as if the fate of Western civilization depended upon it. He would chase a fly ball as far as he could run, and in those days, the walls were made of concrete.
Pete was carried off the field on a stretcher 11 times in his career, and once was administered last rites in the ballpark.
Pete Reiser could have been one of the greatest ball players of all time if he only knew how to find the wall.
Ravaged by his injuries, Pete averaged just .246 his final 5 years, nowhere near his early numbers, and nearly 100 points less than his rookie year. It was manager Leo DeRocher who once said that while Willie Mays had everything, Pete Reiser had everything but luck.
Pete Reiser was a great, great player. I think he could have been an awful lot better had he not been so prone to injuries, because he only knew how to play one way, and that was to play the game the way he thought it should be played.
When Lyman Bostock first broke into the majors in the mid-'70s, he was compared to some of the game's greatest hitters, like teammate Rod Carew.
Lyman Bostock, Carew's most ardent disciple.
He came up in the Twins organization. You could almost see right away he was a cross between Rod Carew and Tony Oliva, a guy that could just flat out hit.
There's a line drive to center field, a wicked shot.
Bostock was a solid line drive hitter, good outfielder, excellent base running, he had good speed to steal bases.
Bostock got better his first 3 years in Minnesota, culminating with a .336 average in 1977. His growth enabled him to become one of the game's first big-money free agents and gave him the chance to hit pay dirt with the California Angels.
I think the people here appreciate me a lot more because I'm from the area, and I hope I can please the people here.
Lyman did not even please himself his first April with the Angels and proceeded to donate that month's salary to charity. But he soon recovered.
There's a drive into right field on the fastball for a base hit.
Come September, he led the Angels with a .296 average. But following a game in Chicago, he walked off the field for the final time. It was in Gary, Indiana, when a bullet intended for someone else struck Lyman in the head, and he was gone.
When tragedy struck and he was murdered, certainly the wrong place at the wrong time, it was just made everybody stop and think.
As a manager of a ball club, you lose a player, but as a man, you lose a friend.
In 4 big league seasons, Bostock had a .311 average. It's one estimate that had he played his entire career, he would have finished with more than 2,100 hits.
Wrapped right past right into center field.
But the truth is, we'll never know.
It's unfortunate that his life was shortened, and we never really saw what this guy could really do.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the top 9 could-have-beens of all time. Rick and Keel was number 9, followed by catcher Ray Fosse. Then came the original wall-banger Pete Reiser and the tragic story of Lyman Bostock, which means it's time for number 5. When a fastball rockets off a bat, no one on the field is closer to it than the pitcher.
Really hurt. There's a line drive. It hits Forey in the face off the bat. Thompson. Forey's down.
It was a blow like this that altered the career of a promising young pitcher in the 50s.
Herb Score came on like a comet. He was the most dominant pitcher in the American League.
Big, tall, lanky, had a big, slow movement going back, but when he came forward, he really shut him down.
A young left-hander with Koufax-like ability, and perhaps even better than Koufax.
Score set a modern rookie record for strikeouts with 245 and won 20 games his sophomore year, seemingly on the way to a Hall of Fame career.
He was a major league winner from day one. His first 2 years he had 500 strikeouts, and then at the beginning of the 3rd year, tragedy struck.
A pitcher plays with fate every time he throws the ball. And against Yankee shortstop Gil McDougall, Herb Score lost.
He threw me a pitch that 9 out of 10 times I would have missed. And I just flicked my bat and it hit him on the right eye. All I remembered was seeing blood flow, and I went into shock. It took something out of me, I know.
Well, some people overcome those things. Herb never did. In other words, when you go back on the mound again, that's got to be in the back of your mind.
It took nearly a year before Herb was back in the majors, and he was never the same. After winning 36 games his first 2 years, he won just 17 after the injury. Who knows what could have been had that ball been inches to the right.
Score would have been the Mickey Mantle of that period, i.e., the man you would not trade a team for.
There's no doubt in my mind that Herb Score had a long career. We'd be talking about him as a Hall of Famer.
Likewise, a batter is just 60 feet 6 inches from a 90-plus mile-per-hour pitch.
Right off the helmet.
And it was a pitch he couldn't avoid that changed the career of a Boston legend in the making.
Tony Conigliaro came up with the Red Sox. He was just 19 years old.
There's a drive by Conigliaro, and it is out of here. What a bomb he had.
He had a lot of poise. He wasn't intimidated at all by the major league scene.
Tony C. had a fantastic year in 1965, leading the American League with 32 home runs, becoming the youngest player in Major League history to lead his league in home runs, and the future looked boundless.
Long drive to left. It's gone.
He also became the second youngest man to hit 100 career home runs at the tender age of 22.
Tony Conigliaro hits a home run.
But it was Tony's aggressive approach to hitting that would do him in.
He was fearless, not afraid of anything. If you check back on Tony's records, you'll see he had a lot of injuries by hit pitches.
And it was a pitch by the Angels' Jack Hamilton that struck Tony flush on his cheek. He suffered broken facial bones and blurred vision, and the prognosis was bleak.
He will not recover to the point where he will go jogging or doing anything that is within the realm of possibilities for the average citizen.
But Tony defied that prediction, and he did, in fact, jog back onto the field after missing one full season.
He was out all of the 1968 season, came back, and it looked like he was going to be fine. He was comeback player of the year.
Into the netting for a home run.
But yet the vision began to deteriorate, and he was never the same.
But while Tony C. never did alter the baseball record books, his injury did change the game in a manner that has impacted every player since.
1-2 delivery, hit him in the head.
For he began to wear an ear flap. And it has saved others from suffering the same split-second fate.
And it's just a shame that that had to happen because of the fact he had a chance to be one of the great home run hitters in the history of the game.
Tony could have been an all-time great power hitter. J.R. Richard was one of the game's great power pitchers. It was in 1975 that Richard became part of the Astros' starting rotation for good and immediately instilled fear throughout the league.
He was another Bob Gibson. He scared the daylights out of you.
6'8", 250, can hold 5 baseballs in his hand at one time.
I threw a fastball clocked in the hundreds.
That is really rushing it up there.
My slider was 98 miles per hour, which is the fastest slider known to man. I was definitely in a world by myself.
From 1976 through 79, he was arguably the best pitcher in baseball. He won 18 games 3 times, won 20 once, and twice topped 300 strikeouts.
That was a fastball at better than 100 miles an hour.
When Nolan Ryan joined the staff in 1980, Houston had a most daunting duo.
Facing JR and Nolan Ryan back-to-back, that was never a picnic.
Things played out as expected through the season's first half. Ryan and Richard were dominating. The Astros were tied for first, and JR was the starting pitcher at the All-Star game.
3-2 coming. Gone.
It appeared as if Richard was on top of the world. But appearances can be deceiving.
Richard has been experiencing stiffness. He uses the word fatigue to describe it.
I had started coming out of games early. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Then, while Richard was playing catch on July 30th, it finally hit him.
All of a sudden, I heard a loud, high-pitched tone ringing in my right ear. And a few minutes later, I lost my balance and my equilibrium was off. Eventually, I guess I passed out because I don't remember anything else.
JR had suffered a stroke due to a blood clot in his neck, and his life was completely changed.
Makes this muscle hurt the most of it.
I had to learn to walk again because my total left side was paralyzed. Just half of it, right down the middle, was paralyzed.
Richard could only watch as Houston lost one of the all-time great championship series to the Phillies.
The disappointment in that Houston dugout, so understandable.
And while Richard would make a valiant attempt at a comeback, he'd never pitch in the major leagues again. But those who saw him, those who faced him, have no doubt that he could have been one of the greatest power pitchers in the history of the game.
Anybody's going to go down as one of the best pitchers of all time. It was going to be JR.
Anytime somebody's career is shortened like that, that's blessed with so much ability, and you just always wonder what could have been.
We now return to Prime 9, where this week we're focusing on the 9 most compelling could-have-beens in the history of baseball. These are the poignant stories of players who appeared to have a great future in the game, only to have it cut short by fate. So now it's time for the top 2, the men we think could have been Major League superstars, but never got the chance. We begin with number 2. When Bo Jackson made his Major League debut in 1986, he was already a college football legend. But we soon discovered that Bo knows baseball, too.
God bless me with speed like a deer.
You want to see some speed, folks? Watch this.
and I could throw a baseball like somebody shot it out of a rifle.
I don't believe it. He made an absolutely perfect throw.
The greatest athlete I've ever seen is Bo Jackson. He could run faster than anyone I've ever seen.
He'll throw. Look at this ace. What speed. That is incredible.
And hit a baseball way further than anybody I had ever seen.
The distance on this thing, it's got to approach 450 or more.
We went, this guy's a freak.
Need a little firewood?
He isn't even human.
Bo on the charge. Bo is there. Yo, mama, run that wall. What a catch, Bo Jackson.
Bo was the first man ever to become an all-star in both pro football and baseball. And it was at the '89 All-Star Game where Bo put an exclamation mark on his legend on the second pitch of the game.
Bo Jackson says hello.
Bo joined Willie Mays as just the second player to hit a home run and steal a base in an All-Star game. He was also named MVP.
Bo's for real. He's God as far as I'm concerned.
But gods, well, they're immortal. And Bo proved to be just human. For during a playoff game with the Raiders in January of '91, he suffered an injury that led to hip replacement surgery.
The first thing that I thought about was I gonna be able to have a normal life?
In fact, Bo's resolve was so strong, he resumed his baseball career, playing in parts of 3 seasons. But the injury in his new hip had taken away both his prodigious power and lightning speed.
Of course, I was disappointed, but not to the point to where it ruined my life. I was thankful to have done the things that I did in the short amount of time.
Baseball was cheated when it didn't have the opportunity to see Bo Jackson play just baseball. If he would have done that, you were looking at a, without a doubt, Hall of Fame player.
But while Bo never made it to the Hall of Fame, our first choice actually did.
I am the proudest man on earth right today, and I didn't know where I was going, if you want me to tell you the truth. I didn't know anything about Cooperstown at all. I just heard the name called.
In 1971, Satchel Paige became the first Negro Leagues player inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
When you talk about Satchel Paige, you're talking about arguably the greatest pitcher to have ever played this game of baseball.
Paige, of course, couldn't join the majors in his prime due to segregation. But when he did get there in 1948, at the age of 42, he went 6-1 with a 2.48 ERA.
And in comes Cleveland's ageless Satchel Paige.
And those who were close to Paige would say that he was probably closer to 52 than 42.
Satchel's major league career lasted just 6 seasons, but he played professionally for almost 40. And he's remembered not only as the greatest pitcher in Negro League history, but also as a master showman.
The Satchel Paige All-Stars are playing an all-white team, and Satchel's on the mound, and Satchel turns and he motions for the outfield and says, "Bring them in. Bring them all the way in." 7 guys kneeling around the mound. Satchel Paige strikes out the side on 9 consecutive pitches.
There was a Negro League All-Star game at Yankee Stadium, and Satchel had pitched into extra innings in winning that game. The next day, Paige was advertised to pitch. And sure enough, Satchel pitched the first 5 innings. They couldn't hit him. And this was Paige, about 40 years old. Heaven knows what he was like 15 years before.
The Negro Leagues were filled with many players who no doubt would have been major league stars. But because Satchel offered us a glimpse, we can only wonder what could have been.
Would he be better than Christy Mathewson or Walter Johnson? He'd been up there with them, I'll say that.
Had the doors open sooner and we got a Satchel Paige in his prime, the Cy Young Award might have been named the Satchel Paige Award. He was that good.
Before we turn the page on another show, one final fun fact about old Satch. In 1965, the ageless wonder started a game for Kansas City, who were then called the Athletics. Paige pitched 3 innings of shutout ball, allowing 1 hit and recording 1 strikeout. And he was only 59 years old when he did this, the oldest man ever to pitch a major league game. That's our Prime 9. What's yours?